Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. How are you doing, Adam? Oh, thank you. Then that isn't even the new music I was talking about. That's some other new music. That is also stuff I composed. But I've got something even newer. There's something I just, actually, the music I put together last night, and the actual video for the intro I put together right after I finished streaming the, language stream. So, let's get stuck in. I didn't already scroll to the bottom of the reaction fodder stuff. There's tons of it. I decided, were you there last night, Adam? I don't, the lively chat and I'm just not remembering. But if you weren't, I was looking at something from the ghouls over at JNS TV, and somebody who used to be an anti-Israel extremist and is now a Zionist, but she still is conscious enough of just how horrible that is a thing to be, that she is not comfortable describing herself as one. Well, whenever I hear these sorts of people who claim to have been on side at one point and then they switch sides and stuff, I'm always kind of curious to look up their background, because usually it turns out that to one extent or another, there's some bullshit in there. Well, in this case, I came up totally empty. I mean, she gave some dates for when she had been previously involved in, like, Palestinian solidarity work and stuff like that, and where. So I just decided to just search her name and see if I could find any reference to her, since when you look up her name now, it's all just stuff related to the video that we actually watched last night. And the thing is, when you go back to, like, between 2005 and 2012, which is when she said this, like, Zionist awakening happened, yeah, there's no mention of her name. So clearly she actually decided as part of this Zionist awakening to change her name as well. But, so, I mean, I'm still kind of curious, though. But, yeah, so we got a bunch of stuff. But, there's a new intro. Rather proud of it.
Well, welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
You can put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
I'm quite proud of it myself. So, got a bunch of things here. I mean, we got some various Darman bullshit. That's always fun. There is dead Democrat wins election. This is from Pim Tool. Democrats will literally vote for dead people. What he leaves off is that they will literally, thank you, literally prefer dead people to his preferred candidates. Which, yeah, Then we've got Has and his bullshit, and he's got a speech called Occupied States of America. I think we know what that's going to be about. We've also got this is an oldie, but probably horribly. Feminist politics has made dating nearly impossible. Then there's Carolyn Glick, the Notre Dame truther and Texan Zionist, and she wants to tell us why Biden's ceasefire speech is the most hostile ever made. We got lots of stuff here. I mean, and there's also kein Martin ist illegal. Einreiseverbot für Martin Söllner von Naomi Seibt. Composing music is a thing I've actually only just begun to get into. I've had tons of music in my head, but I've never actually really learned how to play instruments or anything like that, so I've just gradually been kind of figuring it out on my keyboard. So, what sounds good to everybody, chat? I mean, I'm kind of up for whatever. I'm up for some Dharma, and I'm up for Tim Pool to try to put a happy face on the fact that a dead guy beat his guy. I mean, a dead guy would beat. I mean, if you had a dead guy, just on the strength of the debates, a dead guy would beat both Biden and Trump. I mean, we need. Lewis Black actually had a whole thing about how actually we ought to only allow dead people to become president, and that has aged really well. I mean, yeah, with every passing president, it becomes more preferable to just have a president who's already passed. So, in the Darman bullshit cinematic universe, we've got Mean Girls shame teens for being Asian, in which Darman is going to solve racism again. And then there's Bully doesn't know nerd is pro fighter. We will apparently not be shocked about what happens next, because it doesn't say we're going to be. So clearly what happens next is actually going to be fairly obvious. So what's everybody reckon? Just realized I did not tweet out the links. Hello, Riveroon. Did you miss the new intro? And do you have any strong opinions about what video we start out with? The one about a dead candidate winning, was that? Or Bully doesn't know nerd is pro fighter? I think that was Bully doesn't know nerd is pro fighter, isn't it? It'll be another one of these ones where we're supposed, it's just sort of implied, like the one with the with the guy who's supposedly a kung fu master, but the only reason we know this is that apparently that he's Asian. Like, they don't show him doing any kung fu. Oh, well, when you're not walking the dog, because it is very visual, I will play it again. It's like a minute and a half. Oh, okay, dead candidate winning. Let's do it. Let's do it. So, I've got an idea for an intro for Tim Pool stuff specifically. I want to do a parody of the theme song to the movie New Jack City.
We got this story for you guys. I'd like to congratulate our good friend.
Hustler. Because this motherfucker is just
This is what's his name?
Incarnation of
Rep. Donald Payne Jr.
Hang on, let's. Get that screen resolution up.
We got this story for you guys. I'd like to congratulate our good friend. This is
Oh, yeah, that's right. I was trying to think. I knew there was another case of the Republicans running somebody so unpopular that a dead dude won.
what's his name? Rep. Donald Payne Jr. Congratulations, good sir, for winning an election from beyond the grave.
Sick.
A dead Democrat won his primary.
Well, who did he win against, Tim? Who did he win against?
His office, so he had a heart attack, and his office initially was like, everything is fine, no worries, he's going to be back soon. And then it came out that actually he had been on a ventilator for weeks.
Wow.
He was in a coma, and his office was like,
You're not making this look better for yourselves. So a guy who was in a coma for weeks kicked your guy's ass. And I'm not holding a brief for this Payne guy. I mean, Democrats fucking suck. I don't know anything about this guy. All I know is they looked at Tim Pool's preferred candidate. They looked at a dead guy and said, you know, it's time to respect the dead. Which, if you haven't heard of that podcast, it's great. It's Kalen Conrad and somebody else whose name I can't remember, and they do these hilarious things about horrible dead people. Check it out. It's on YouTube.
like,
That's sad.
he's recovering. No, also, he took the seat that his dad previously, his dad died, vacated a seat, he got this seat.
What?
Yeah.
It's a cursed seat.
And so, I mean, obviously, death is sad. This has happened a couple times before. Like, Hale Boggs went missing in Alaska, but it was so close to his primary, like his name was already on it. He won anyways. So it does happen on occasion, but
it doesn't really speak very highly of their opponents, though.
I think Democrats in Congress are in a weird position. We know the margin is really tight right now. It's only like 4 seats difference.
New Jersey's 10th district is cursed, and
Well, I mean, it is in New Jersey.
if you are running for Congress, you could fall victim to that curse.
Well, yeah, except, again, what's the bigger curse, though? Dying in your campaign or being the guy who lost to the dead?
Well, what if there's a new election and Republican wins it?
Kalen and
happens,
Hoots.
like,
Then he has a heart attack.
It's just and it goes.
I mean, this sounds great. We need to have this. This would make elections so much better. This is what we need. That's my electoral reform. No, you're only allowed to be a candidate if it is guaranteed you will not actually survive to take office.
Eventually, they're like, we'll just put a ghost in. They're in the best shape to hold this, and they say,
Well, I mean, they might as well. I mean, clearly, it doesn't take all that much to be your guy.
it's not term limited, so the ghost stays in for 100 years.
The real story is that people voted for him.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because people don't care about anything.
They don't.
Well, clearly they do care, though. They cared about your guy not getting in. They cared about something there, because literally that is the Democrats' entire fucking message anymore. You know, yeah, we suck, but look at the other guys. They're fucking horrible. You vote for us to suck a little bit less. Yeah, I mean, and people are like, they looked at the dead guy. They looked at whoever the hell his opponent was, and they said, well, at least the dead guy isn't going to do any harm. It's like a William Henry Harrison situation.
Mostly don't pay attention, Dave.
Also,
They don't care.
Did
All they care about is Democrat, Republican.
Yeah, and I seriously wondered, did any of them know he had died? Because again,
I mean, if they did, that still does not look good for your team. I'm sorry, I forget. Tim Pool's whole thing is that he's not really a Republican. He just he's a liberal, don't you know? He'll tell you this. He's a liberal. Liberals, they abandoned him, and that's why he has to hang out with neo-Nazis. He didn't change. Liberalism changed. Liberalism got to be a lot less cool with neo-Nazis. I mean, at least before the whole Ukraine thing really blew up, and then suddenly liberalism got very, very cool with at least some neo-Nazis.
his office was weird about it. I mean, I remember his passing. It's very sad for his family. You know, his young children. Again, his office had been a little bit sketchy about not being honest about the fact that he wasn't in good conditions, that things were looking pretty serious. And so theoretically, that would have been the time when voters were like, "Oh no, maybe we've got to like plan ahead."
I mean, yeah, but obviously, again, however you spin it, a dead guy beat the Republican. And in fact, I mean, there's precedent. I mean, Adam pointed out some precedent for that, but there's also polling. Like, I mean, if you look at the head-to-head polling on this horrible presidential election we're being subjected to, speaking of situations where, I mean, actually a dead candidate would be just absolutely just a shoo-in to win. So what they just asked people, like, a Democrat, a generic Democrat, no, you know, not any name, and a generic Democrat, sight unseen, in a black box, performs better against Trump than Joe Biden does at this point.
Nobody even tried to run against him?
It's an uncontested district.
That's wild, man. And then the people who went and voted, they were like, I'll vote for this guy because he has a D in it. I say we abolish ballots. Abolish.
Wait, this is a wonderful idea. So we're going to abolish ballots and then what?
Solves all the problems.
How do you go?
Yeah, it solves all the problems. This is great. This is, I mean, of all the things for him to turn this over into proposing, I mean, abolishing ballots.
What's your plan?
You want to vote for someone, you got to write their name down.
Their name down.
Oh, you got yeah.
That's how it used to be.
Yeah.
Before the Civil War, you had to write someone's name down. And what would happen is political parties would give people ballots being like, here's a list of the candidates that we like.
Yeah, so what you're pointing out is that this literally would make no difference because it's not like people are going to write down... it's not like people are going to be doing this unaided. Somebody will be putting together a list for them of the people to support. And the dead guy, in this case, would have been on that list.
So what would happen is if we got rid of ballots, Democrats wouldn't give out... There'd be no mail-in ballots anymore. It would literally... They'd bring you a flyer being like, when you go to vote, vote for these people.
Wait, no mail-in ballots. So basically people with disabilities, sick people, people who are out of the country, people who are, like, abroad in the imperial military or something like that. They all don't get to vote then if there are no mail-in ballots. Okay, I mean, this is essentially how, like, the Republican Party does vote suppression. I mean, they... As opposed to the Democrats who do vote suppression by just making sure they never once stand for anything most people care about.
And anything that arrived in the mail for voting would be blank. And so they'd be like, here's a list of names to write in. People wouldn't do it. Yep. They'd be like, I'm not writing all that down. Right now you go check a box. And then I can be like, get out of my face. But you get rid of ballots, dead people aren't going to win elections anymore.
But the thing, first of all, why? Why would that... First of all, the piece of paper that you write the names down on, that's the ballot. That's what a ballot is. Tim doesn't know what ballots are. That's what we've just found out. He literally doesn't know what ballots are. But, why would that change this? Because somebody would put together... First of all, I mean, can you imagine having to go through 1 million people's fucking handwriting to, like, interpret the votes? What an absolute pain in the ass that would be. I mean, it's complicated enough when you're just making a hole in a piece of paper. But, I mean, trying to read 1 million people's handwriting, much of it not very good, much of it very rushed. Yeah, I mean, that'll make everything better.
It didn't used to be like this. Abolish ballots.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah. Honestly.
But I think this shows...
People don't have time to research all of the different...
And they shouldn't vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, you think that's going to help your people?
Rock the vote, the whole, like, rock the vote in the 90s was a terrible idea.
What was it?
It was a campaign on MTV.
Oh. That looks like some weird ass runic shit on his arm there.
It was when Bill Clinton went on and played sax and talked to the MTV generation
Cool
and
and
stuff.
relatable.
Yeah, he was cool musician, blah blah blah. But
No, he
the
wasn't.
rock the vote was just getting people out to vote, and it didn't matter that they were unaware of what the thing was, and the way that rock the vote was.
What, you think that people being aware would actually improve your situation?
Or if I recall correctly, the way that it was presented, it wasn't partisan, but you still it wasn't partisan, but you still kind of got the sense that people were probably going to vote for Democrats
Well, yeah, because that's what most people who vote, most people who actually have any intention of voting, prefer them. Like, I mean, it's just a fact. Republicans are supported by a minority. That's why Republicans are always trying, the way they win elections is either gerrymandering or by making it harder to vote.
Democrats were the not stuffy ones. Bill Clinton smoked pot. It was kind of like that was the vibe.
Well, it's like when Facebook, pushes everybody to go vote. It's like the vibe behind it.
You're right, but it's 100 times less insidious back in the 90s than it was.
Wow, it's less insidious. Why was it less insidious back in the 90s? Exactly.
With Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook only sends notifications to Democrats.
Yeah, it's
Really? I get those notifications. I'm not a fucking Democrat. Chad, do you get those fucking notifications?
It's real bad.
And that's data they actually tracked. Democrats will get a notification saying go vote, Republicans won't.
Yeah.
That's how the game works.
Yeah, right.
It is. There's a lot of underhanded stuff, and it's going to make it more.
Yeah, there's a lot of underhanded stuff. Why don't we talk about Florida in 2000 maybe? Or Ohio in 2004? There was a lot of underhanded stuff. Do you really want to talk about the underhanded stuff? Because I don't think you come out of that so well, actually.
More and more likely that people are going to have less and less confidence in.
Just raise the voting age to 30.
I don't see that happening.
I'm now wondering if Payne's wife is going to run at his place, because the last two times, again, I'm going to reference Hale Boggs and Nick Begich when they went missing in Alaska and they won their elections. It ended up being their wives who ran, and Hale Boggs' wife did win. I think it's always weird when this stuff happens. I think.
You mean like when George W. Bush ran for his father's job, and his father basically guaranteed he got in, and then his brother got a governorship because he was actually even less impressive than George W. You mean how we have fucking.
If you were to have no name on the ballot, it would have been interesting, because maybe the community would, in this case, have fundamentally been like, oh, well, this person is already someone I know and who's been active in our community, and that's who I think should represent us. But
what, even if they're not even running for office? That's the other thing. This is such a great idea. So people will just write in any old shit.
Ultimately, I think it's just sort of name association.
Actually, that would be kind of interesting, though. Because people are just writing in any old shit. Let's just remember the idea here that, as Pim put it, was that supposedly people were going to queue for, 6 or 7 hours to get a chance to go in there, and they would then balk at the idea that they had to write the name in. People who are spending an entire day waiting to get a chance to vote are going to just say fuck that if they have to write somebody's name in.
And the fact that this guy had this seat for so long after his dad held it for a long time, this community is just sort of I don't know, that's the guy who does this job. Mm-hmm. It would take more legwork for people to be aware of what's going on. They'd have to be more plugged into their community if they were trying to have to select someone on the fly after someone has.
Only net taxpayers can vote.
Well, okay, so the rich are out then.
All in favor?
I don't hate.
What's great, see, this is what he's talking about. He's just such a normal, centrist guy. Here he is saying only rich people over 30 should be allowed to vote. He thinks that rich people are net taxpayers, you see.
Hate it. I don't like.
Got two?
Huh?
Yay? Yay? All right, the yays have it. From now on, the court of Timcast has agreed, if you're not a net taxpayer, you don't get to vote.
Well, so, I mean, that's like Donald Trump is out, like Elon Musk is out.
Which basically means, like, only the top 20% of income earners in the country get to vote from now on.
That's like literally the opposite of what it means, but in his imagination, yeah.
So that basically means, like, everybody watching the show, you can't vote anymore. Net taxpayer is not an easy thing to accomplish.
No, it is not, because it means that you're absolutely fucked. Because you're probably not getting paid all that much. And you're probably, I mean, if for example, you're in the wonderful precarious world of the gig economy, you're getting to pay double payroll tax. But he thinks that the people who pay their entire contribution to Social Security off of the money they make in the first 5 seconds of the year are the net taxpayers, the people who pay like basically nothing in taxes.
Because basically the way it works is, if you're spending like...
And also, like, what's the point of this? They already get to... I mean, if he's saying that he's talking about the top 20%, as opposed to net taxpayers, those are different groups. But, if he's talking about, like, only rich people actually getting to have a say, what the fuck does he think would change? That's what we've got now. That's why it's Trump versus Biden.
Tax bill at the end of the year is like $20K. You're not a net taxpayer. I think it's got to be like $60,000 or $70,000 in taxes paid before you become a net taxpayer.
That's not what net means. That's like literally not what net means. Does he not? He doesn't know what gross and net are.
Yeah.
So what's the actual definition?
It means that you actually end up paying, that you pay in to the system rather than not paying into the system.
It means you are paying more than you are receiving. So
well, then rich people definitely don't count because they receive more than anyone. They're the ones getting all the fucking subsidies. I mean, Elon Musk is, NASA is bankrolling SpaceX. You got the CIA and the Pentagon bankrolling, Jeff Bezos' companies through Palantir and all that bullshit. I mean, those are the most heavily subsidized motherfuckers in the entire system.
The amount of people in this country who pay more than they receive is super small. The overwhelming majority of people in this country...
If rich people paid more than they received, then they would be in the red. If rich people paid more than they receive in subsidies and shit, they would literally be in the red. I mean, because their income is largely, government subsidies in those income brackets. When you get to the absolute top, the richest couple of hundred motherfuckers in the planet, those people are overwhelmingly bankrolled by state subsidies or inherit the state subsidies of previous generations.
Including the working class and middle class are receiving more from the government than they're paying into it. And it's overwhelmingly the wealthy that are covering the costs.
No, they fucking aren't. Like, what costs are they covering exactly? Because they're not paying taxes for the most part. Like, if they are, it's just a laughable amount. I mean, let's just remember, it was like spun as if, when Donald Trump's tax returns came out some years ago, and it turned out he had paid like $750 in the U.S., but in the literal notorious international tax haven of Panama, he had to pay like $750,000, which is to say that the U.S. allowed him to pay less in money in tax than a notorious international tax haven did.
Technically, it's modern monetary theory, and the government just prints money and deficit spends into oblivion until the system crashes.
Do you actually want that?
Want what? Net taxpayer voting?
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm not saying it's a perfect solution.
Well, what's the problem that it's supposed to solve? Like, let's just assume incorrectly that it's rich people who are the ones who pay in more than they get out. Let's just assume that for a minute. Are you saying they don't have enough of a say in the system as it is? That your problem is that rich people don't get enough of a say in the system. This is like literally feudalism he's proposing.
But the idea that anyone can show up to a polling station, vote for a dead guy.
He is so butthurt that his guy lost to a dead guy.
I think the dead guy
have better candidates.
Should be the one in office, and no one can challenge him. He should be the one on the ballot. They should not remove him.
Well, that was somebody else's fucking decision, wasn't it? It's a zero-sum game. If you're going electoral politics in this country, you can either vote for the one or you vote for the other. Nobody wanted to vote for the other one, so the dead guy got in. That's how that fucking works.
People want what they want. If they voted for a dog, the dog is the mayor. I've seen it happen.
It's getting done. Well, you vote.
You know he hasn't seen that happen. You do actually have to be human in order to hold office. Despite what Joe Biden and Donald Trump and various other sleep paralysis demons might lead you to think, you do have to be a member of the same species.
Voted for a dead guy, man. It's your own fault.
Remember when the Republicans...
Surely it's the opponent's fault if the opponent lost to a dead guy.
Voted for the trans anarchist Satanist in New Hampshire?
Yeah, she almost won too.
That's right.
Yeah, so what? Based. Again, so what you're saying is that your people ran a candidate who was less popular than somebody in a really fairly right-wing state like New Hampshire, no less, than somebody that you hold in utter contempt just because of their existence.
She just got out of jail too. It was crypto stuff though, so
weird.
Jail.
So a transgender anarchist Satanist ran as the Republican sheriff, I believe, right?
She was trying to run for sheriff
and won the primary. Yeah. And then Republicans started freaking out, like, "Who did I vote for? What?" And I was laughing. I was like, "You deserve it."
Yeah.
No.
No. Well, first of all, what kind of anarchist is this who's running for sheriff?
Oh, not really. I guess, but it proves a great point.
Yeah, it does.
People will vote for
what point?
Anyone as long as the right letter is next to their name.
Yeah, except maybe people actually voted for this person because... I see. I do not want to rely on Tim Pool's merry band for my assumption about this candidate's pronouns, but could it actually be, Tim? Could it actually be that the reason that they won that primary is because people looked at them and they decided either they liked what she had to say, or they, at the very least, liked what she had to say better than the alternative? Yeah, or as a prank maybe, but still, it's like, he's sitting here freaking out saying, you have to, what this really comes down to is that Tim is freaking out because the candidates and saying, we have to abolish even the pretense of bourgeois democracy and just go back to literal fucking feudalism because the candidates he backs are so unpopular. And that can't be because his candidates are just legitimately unpopular. That has to be because there's something wrong with the people who are voting. And it's really, for a guy who loves to talk about how he's against the elites, his solution to make the electoral system work the way he thinks it ought to work is to let only the fucking elites, the rich motherfuckers, vote in it. Like, these motherfuckers go into so many conspiracy theories, and it's like, oh, the rich, the global elites and everybody are running everything, and they're responsible for all the bad stuff and everything, and they're turning frogs gay, don't you know, or whatever. But then when you actually listen to what their solution is, it's like, yeah, and those are the people we think should be the only people allowed to vote.
This is not voting. The system doesn't work.
It literally is voting.
Right now we have a contest between two warring oligarch parties about who can get the most pieces of paper with signatures on them.
Wow, he just discovered it. Welcome to the conversation, Tim.
No one.
Wait, and your solution again is that only oligarchs should be allowed to vote. unless they're under 30. Like, if this is the problem, two warring oligarch parties, then how is your solution related to that?
Actually voting for anything meaningful. And the problem is, Donald Trump beat them at their own game, so they lost their minds.
Ja, also, die Rechten sind halt so. Die erzählen jeden Scheiß. Es ist ja ihnen eigentlich völlig egal, ob es stimmt oder nicht. Es geht darum, ihre Gewaltbereitschaft, also beziehungsweise ihre mittelbare Gewaltbereitschaft zu rechtfertigen. Also sie werden da jeden Scheiß erzählen. Und man kann es gewissermaßen nachvollziehen, dass man sich darüber beschwert, dass Donald Trump strafrechtlich angeklagt wird. Denn wir haben seit dem Zweiten Weltkrieg in diesem Land keinen einzigen Präsidenten gehabt, der sich nicht irgendwie strafbar gemacht hat. Und meistens, also sich Kapitaldelikte schuldig gemacht hat. Und kein einziger hat jemals eine Anklage fressen müssen. Und dann kommen die daher und sie lassen sich eine Anklageschrift einfallen, die ja also keinen Präzedenzfall darstellt. Ja, also ich kann mir schon vorstellen, dass sie da unzufrieden sind. Also ich bin's ja nämlich auch. Die müssten eigentlich alle in Bau. Well, how was Tim Pool ever seriously a part of Occupy? I mean, that's the thing. That was the thing about Occupy. It was such a weird ass moment because it was so politically amorphous that you had everything in there, and like literally every grifter, every cult that wanted to latch on to popular outrage was in there. And so, I mean, there was tons of fash in Occupy. I mean, this is when I first really started. I mean, the sort of people I ended up connected with through Occupy on Facebook, because I wasn't very careful who I friended back then, were the reason I started to think, all this like conspiracism shit seems to really be kind of a gateway drug for fascism. The reason I started thinking about that is because there were so many fash somehow connected into it. The Fed pricks, and all those sorts of wonderful motherfuckers.
And now their game ain't working no more, and they can't stop Trump.
But their game is working. Their game is working. That's why this is all they got. Wait a second. He thinks that it's bad to have two warring oligarch parties. But again, literally the guy he wants in office is a billionaire. Like, the incoherence is actually like some sort of weird performance art almost. It is like a Jackson Pollock, but verbal. It's the fucking oligarchs. That's all the problems. Well, by the way, I mean, look, the guy I want, I want a billionaire to run. Like, dude, like, make it fucking sense. Make it make sense.
So this is what they're resorting to. But elections weren't supposed to be real.
Ah, damn it.
There you go.
Wait, okay. Hang on a second. What are you saying?
Not in the past 100 years. So this is what they're resorting to. But elections weren't supposed to be real. There you go.
I mean, that's like the first true thing he said. I mean, elections and capitalism are bullshit. But that's your fucking system. That's what you want to keep. Like, I mean, he has so... Like, how the hell does he come to these positions? Does he give anything, he doesn't, he clearly, there's no thought involved, surely. But, like, what the... He can go from being dissatisfied with oligarchs to liking oligarchs in the space of 2 sentences. Wow, I mean, that's just wild. And this is what happens when he hasn't got weird. Weedlord was a moderating influence. Weedlord towards the end there would go, sir, I'm not sure if that totally makes sense. And can we talk about mining the moon? And it would sort of break the cycle, but nobody's breaking the cycle anymore. And so he's just sitting here. He will have like 10 contradictory positions in 3 sentences.
Elections weren't supposed to be real.
Right.
Well,
not,
I've
not
told
in the past
before
100
that
years.
only married men who own property and have children should vote. So I think, there's all kinds of ways. Only married.
Oh.
Elections weren't supposed to be real.
Right.
Well,
not,
I've
not
told
in the past
before
100
that
years.
only married men who own property and have children should vote. So
Well, she's the one she calls herself the red-haired libertarian. I mean, just wonderful ideology that right-wing libertarianism is. You hear this sort of thing coming from that mob quite a bit.
I think, there's all kinds of ways we could improve the voting system.
How about only married men who own property and have children and who served in the armed forces?
Get really specific.
Yep.
Interesting.
You had to have served this nation, have a...
Well, I mean, there are like multiple reasons then that Tim Pool can't vote, so I would not dismiss it out of hand.
real stake in the future of this nation, and that includes land and family.
And so the other,
I think the land and family are...
and it's interesting that he just says all of this and he just sort of accepts the idea that it should only be men. Ja. Aber man merkt ja wirklich, wo die Möglichkeit, also wenn das alles also nicht nur Schuh wäre ganz Washington gerade am Ausflippen. Die hätten alle wirklich eine Heidenangst und das tun sie nicht. Wovor sie aber Angst haben, ist die Möglichkeit einer Anklage vor dem Internationalen Strafgerichtshof. Da flippen sie richtig aus. Da ticken sie voll aus. Die drohen den Staatsanwalt und so weiter mit, also sogar mit dem Tode, ganz schriftlich und ausdrücklich und so. Und da merkt man, dass da wirklich irgendwas mit Rechtsstaatliches ist da los. Das mit, also der Anklage gegen Donald Trump, also der Mann hat Verbrechen gegen die Menschlichkeit begangen. Das interessiert niemanden.
They're actually a big part of it. I mean, I think ultimately we want our voters to be engaged in our civic process, and I remember Vivek Ramaswamy talked about this, right? Like, you want people who feel as though they are actively participating in the society that they have.
I mean, tell me, see, these people love to claim that they're the ones with their finger on the pulse of the population, and then it's like everybody else, all the people who are, all the political opposition that they have, just it has to have some sort of big conspiracy, because nobody really likes anything that, people to the left of them, which is kind of everybody, want. And here they are talking about how the only way they can get some chance to have their candidates be guaranteed to be more popular than dead people is by restricting the franchise to a very small number of rich men.
Have ties to the culture and especially to their communities to be the people casting votes to decide what happens here.
And who gets to fucking decide that, though?
And I think, again, like, dead congressmen on ballots are sort of complicated. Did they print it already? Should they have voted for him? I don't know.
It's interesting that all of them are avoiding the question of who the hell did he run against who lost?
But I think it should be, the voters should be people who...
And of course the thing is, and I mean, I don't know anything about this particular vote, so maybe nobody had any idea apparently. I mean, assuming anything they were saying was true, then the guy's office was kind of keeping that a little bit quiet. But then voting for him would guarantee a special election. There would have to be a by-election at which somebody else is chosen. Whereas if they vote for the other guy, then he just wins. So, I mean, they're acting like it's just so wild that people would vote for the dead guy. But, I mean, first of all, they clearly didn't like their guy. And second of all, I mean, if you want to actually have the chance to vote for a living candidate that you like rather than a living candidate who you don't even like as much as a dead guy, then you had to vote for the dead guy because that's just how the fucking system works.
Feel invested in the future of the nation.
Is there any precedent of countries having systems like you're describing?
Yeah, it's called fucking feudalism.
The United States?
When?
When it first started, you had to be a landowner to vote?
Yeah, and white and male, and there were slaves. I mean, again, I mean, these guys tell on themselves so much when they have their proposals.
And a man?
And white.
I'm not a historian on the voting
Oh, yeah, he's not a historian, you see.
processes of other countries. I'd imagine all of them. In fact, I'd imagine most of them don't allow you to vote at all.
The vote was fairly novel in like 1800. You know what I mean? It's not like it was common for the average man to be able to vote. The average person, like you hear a lot of feminists talk about the fact that like it took so long for women to get the vote and et cetera, which is a blatant lie because.
Well, why is it a blatant lie? I mean, we know that it isn't, but how's he gonna?
If you look at on a societal time scale, right? How long human beings have been human beings, and we've had societies.
Yeah, but it's
men got the right to vote, and instantaneously.
Oh, so what you're saying is if we look at this on a time scale that has nothing to do with actual human beings' lifetimes, then the couple of centuries it took between men getting the vote and women getting the vote is no time at all. That's cute.
Instantaneously, women did. If you look at it as at a full.
Yeah, well, why don't we look at it? Why don't we look at it from a geological standpoint? Because then, like, all of this stuff happened all at once. You know, I mean, the planet's been there for what, 4.5 billion years? I think is the estimate I've read. I mean, and you look at it on that time scale, then I mean, all of this is just happening all at once because that's nothing at all. It's a couple hundred years. I wonder if maybe there's another perspective that is maybe based on I don't know, the lifetimes of actual humans.
Time scale. It was what, 50 years, 100 years, less than 100 years when they got the vote. So,
well, no, more like 300.
In 200,000 years that human beings have been human.
Yeah, which is a meaningful time, a meaningful span of time for us to be talking about. We all know what a couple of 100,000 years is like.
And 100,000 years that we've had fairly complex societies, and they didn't have votes, like, didn't at all. And
yeah, except they actually did in a lot of them. I mean, they worked in different sorts of ways, but they certainly existed. It wasn't a completely novel thing. What was novel, if anything, in this 17th, 18th century was how many people actually started to get to. I mean, but they're actually, I mean, Jesus, these people do not know anything.
And all men didn't have enfranchisement when the U.S. was created. It was only, we were talking select few. So then,
yeah, I mean, they're all very carefully avoiding the bit where it was all white guys.
Even beyond that, once all men got enfranchised, actually all men, it was almost instantaneously that women did too.
Yeah, except not all women, because a lot of women had to wait. I mean, actually, a whole lot of women and a whole lot of men had to wait until like the 1960s. And actually, people between 18 and 21 had to wait till the 1970s. But yeah, if we're looking at it in the absurd time scale of 200,000 years, in which case, what we right now are like immediately adjacent to, we are like immediately adjacent to the, say the bubonic plague. That's only, I mean, that's nothing. That's like what, 600-700 years. That's nothing. Like, I mean, it's just nonsense.
It's just that if you say that men oppressed women, then you can go ahead and demand goodies from the government. Because
Oh, well, see, the fact that what?
I want to show you this map. This is really funny. This is a map of countries with women's right to vote, yes and no. And you can see there's only one country listed where women don't have a right to vote. You know what country that is? It's Eritrea. Do you want to know why that's funny?
Yeah, I don't think it actually is, but what'll be really funny is if Tim Pool turns out to have some sort of untapped fount of knowledge about what goes down in Eritrea.
Because North Korea is listed as, yes, women can vote.
Well, why is that okay? So what?
That's a good one.
I mean, Iran.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia.
Women can vote and run.
Well, I mean, they don't. That's already the fact that Saudi Arabia is on there actually kind of calls the entire thing into question, because there are no actual like institutions that there are meaningful elections held for. I mean, there is an advisory council, but literally the only people who have an actual say in politics are the fucking ruling family and the United States.
Saudi Arabia have elections? They're a kingdom.
So this is actually, in 2015, women are granted the right to vote and hold office. There are no national elections in Saudi Arabia. It's an absolute monarchy. What is this map?
Yeah.
Look, Greenland has no data. If you're a woman in Greenland, you can't.
Well, no, that's also wrong, because Greenland is technically controlled by Denmark. So it follows Danish law, and women can certainly vote in Denmark.
What website is this?
WorldPopulationReview.com. This is fun.
Suspect.
Saudi Arabia allows women to vote, but it's an absolute monarchy with no elections. Huh?
Well, no, there are elections to the Shura Council, which is pointless because all they can do is make suggestions.
What?
I want to fact check that because there was all this criticism of Saudi
I guess it's local elections.
Yeah, and there was this. They're in charge of, I can't remember. Maybe it's the UN's like feminism conference this year, and people are like, "But it's Saudi Arabia." Like,
well, yeah, but the U.S. gets to be in the UN Human Rights Council.
No, they're historically not super friendly to women. But I guess Saudi Arabia is really trying to change their image. You know, they let women drive now with male chaperone. Like,
well, considering what her proposal for political reform was a few minutes ago, like, what's she complaining about?
It's very funny, but it's all just to appeal to the West.
I do think it's funny too that like there are countries that are gray. They just don't know. Benin, it's like they might be able to. I'm not sure. Guinea-Bissau. I don't know. What's this? Or is this? What is that? Timor-Leste? How do you pronounce that?
Timor-Leste.
I'm pretty sure you got Timor right.
New Caledonia. Not sure. Maybe they can. Maybe they can't.
Well, no. New Caledonia is a fucking French-occupied territory, where right now, actually, there's a whole uprising going on because France. Okay, they've had independence votes repeatedly, and they always break down the same way. The actual indigenous Kanaki people want independence. They want the French to fuck off. And the French settlers, on the other hand, want to stay part of France. And so Macron wanted to expand the voter rolls to put more settlers on them. And then have another independence vote. And people were not happy about that because, it's just a way to ensure that the French occupation continues.
Maybe there are many more countries where they can't actually vote. Thanks for checking out this clip.
You're not welcome. Okay. So there we go. So where shall we go next? And I'm just gonna, everybody's here, gonna just show that introduction sequence again. Because I'm very proud of it.
But welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, cut and paste a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Yes, I hope you got to see it this time, Riveroon. I'm quite proud of it. The music is all my own compositions, except for there are a couple of the clips have background music that is something that isn't mine, just for a couple of seconds. But overwhelmingly, it's my stuff. Yes, there was a suggestion from Gigi M. It is a video in German. We could certainly look at that if everybody's cool with it. I don't know how many people will understand the whole thing, and it is a bit complicated to do, but that is an option. There's also, we've got some Darman crap. We've got, we get rid of this. Move from playlist. I need to get in the habit of doing that a bit more. Because my playlist, I have 818 fucking videos on this playlist. Oh, yes. I was very happy with that. Because that's all one clip. That is, in fact, all one clip. Kind of interested in the one you mentioned last night. Kein Martin ist illegal. If we do a Naomi Zeipt one, I think that's the one I'd do, because I think that's going to have some very impressive self-contradiction in there. But other suggestions are welcome. I mean, of course, I don't know how many people will understand it if I do something that's in German. But oh yeah, there's also his occupied States of America. That's going to be some interesting bullshit. So, like, what's everyone think? We got a half an hour to go. Any opinions, Adam, Riveroon, chat in general? Otherwise, we can do the Naomi Zeipt one. It's about a neo-Nazi by the name of Martin Zellner, who's not allowed to go into Germany because he funded, amongst other things, the guy who did the Christchurch shooting. And Naomi Zellner, not Naomi Zeipt. Well, see, that is the difficulty. I still haven't figured out a great way to deal with. I want this to be a multilingual stream, but I also, if I do more non-English stuff, then a lot of the people watching won't understand it, and it all becomes very complicated. I think we'll do the has one, actually. just in the interest of everybody understanding what's going on. I mean, suggestions for how to manage that I would be very open to.
I'd like to thank everybody who's come out tonight
This is the internet's most insecure man.
in defiance of those who actually tried to have this event shut down, if you can believe it. And I think in terms of the showing here, how successful that was.
Oh God, I mean, this seal that he's got on here, first of all, it looks like it was drawn on with magic marker. For another thing, this looks like some dystopian alternate universe national seal that he's got here.
Speaks for itself. But I'd also like to compliment the curiosity of our guests tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it must be a very curious group of people who decided to show up to hear him.
Right. Because we understand that some of the ideas that we're presenting and the angle from which we're presenting it is a little bit unorthodox.
Well, I mean, unless you're a fascist, in which case it's kind of old hat.
But it's necessary, most of all, in addition to action, to have clarity about the reality in which action is demanded in the first place. And the political situation here in the United States,
I mean,
is among the realities we have the least amount of clarity on.
Well, maybe if you lack clarity on it, you should sit down and maybe let somebody else talk.
If you ask the average American, even those who are outraged by the events going on in Gaza, why exactly we support the Zionist entity and the origins of the global system in which this kind of genocide is somehow tolerable and acceptable.
Well, I mean, okay, chat, what's he gonna say? Because I think what we know is it's not going to be U.S. imperialism or capitalism. That is not the direction he's been taking.
It's completely unclear. So what I'd like to do tonight is provide some clarity. I'd like to provide some historical context of how exactly we got here in the first place.
Occupied States of America. I mean, this is literally just neo-Nazi shit. They have that whole thing with ZOG, the Zionist Occupied Government, which is an actual example of somebody using Zionist and they actually mean Jews. That is a thing that does happen sometimes, but it's usually fairly fucking obvious because it comes in context like this.
So, it's important to understand the origins of the occupation, as I call it, of the America as it stands, because
Well, I mean, it was invaded by Europeans and they colonized it. That's what you're talking about, right?
by far, the U.S. regime bears the greatest responsibility for the Zionist entity, and this is a fact that the forces of the resistance, including those brave fighters in Yemen, themselves recognized. Because without the global hegemony of the United States, it is doubtful whether or not there would have even been a Zionist entity today to even speak of.
Oh, wow, he's debunking himself in advance of explaining what he's even talking about. That's handy.
The U.S. openly delivers upwards of $4 billion annually to the Zionist entity in the name of giving it a military edge over the rest of its neighbors.
Yeah, and one thing to note is that 75% of that has to immediately go right back to U.S. military corporations. And the other 25% goes to Israeli companies that are generally mixed U.S. and Israeli capital, because there really is no such thing as Israeli capital. Economically, materially, Israel is not an independent entity.
And we can also see that it's the United States which is almost unconditionally replenishing all of the ammunition of the Zionist entity, in addition to the Iron Dome. As you can see here, the most
does this benefit Americans? Well, of course not. I mean, it benefits capitalists. Is he going to talk about that? Or where is he? I mean, why? Okay.
Foreign aid we've ever given to a country, military aid, is Israel. And then if you see Egypt up on third, that's just to bribe the Egyptians not to strike Israel. So that should also be included.
Well, no, I mean, it's to maintain, it's to prop up a dictatorship that that has no particular desire to strike Israel. I mean, it is a U.S. puppet regime there.
And the amount we give to Israel as well. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, does this benefit Americans? How does this benefit us? And if not, why is it that there are...
Well, is that really... Okay, I mean, that is a question. But I have to say, I mean, from the perspective of, like, Palestinians getting fucking massacred, is that the question you want people in the country responsible for this to necessarily be focusing on? What's in it for me? Like, because if you consider, because here's the thing, I mean, and this is the whole thing where they'll do, like, reactionaries who try to sort of hijack Palestinian solidarity will often be like, this is against American interests. But the thing is, the minute you center American interests, you're already saying that there are situations in which you would be okay with throwing the Palestinians under the bus. So, like, what's the fucking difference?
Our interests that are able to force upon us as a country, in the form of exacting our tax dollars, agendas and interests that clearly don't align with ours.
River Room,
Now,
that's a good idea.
When I say that
that is a great idea.
The United States is an occupied country, I'm not just trying to be hyperbolic.
And you're not talking about the way in which it literally is one, because you don't seem to give a shit about indigenous people.
According to international law, an occupation is defined when a territory is placed under the authority of and it calls it a hostile army.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. The reason it calls it that, motherfucker, is that it is referring literally to a military occupation. The whole point of a military occupation is that the military of the occupying power is either on or immediately around the territory and exercising what's called effective control. Like, the fucking, I mean, what we've seen over the past 8 months is that the fucking Israeli military, such as it is, they couldn't occupy a high school here. They literally, I mean, the motherfuckers can't fight. If you sent them to Philly, they'd get their asses kicked.
Now, of course, this is intentionally vague.
No, it isn't intentionally vague. It's very specific.
But the most important thing about this, actually...
What's vague about it? What's vague about occupying army?
Is that a hostile army or some kind of interest...
Not or some kind of interest, a hostile army.
...occupies a territory at the expense of the sovereign authority that lays claim and has title in that land, meaning... It's technically not considered an occupation when there's an annexation, for example, when the
Oh, you know what he's doing here? Actually, like, literally, it is an occupation when there's an annexation. Like, it would be impossible to have an annexation without one, in fact. This is, like, I mean, so he's saying that the West Bank isn't an occupation then because they're annexing it?
Territory is integrated or simply conquered. Then it's up to the international community to decide whether that's legitimate or not.
No, it isn't, actually. Like, I mean, the reason is, this is, like, absolute nonsense. I mean, he said he was talking about international law. Well, international law is actually very clear on the subject of territorial acquisition by military means. Since World War II, the position is that it is inadmissible. That is why the settlements are illegal. That is why everything Israel does in the West Bank and Gaza is illegal to begin with. Because to the extent that Israel can claim the right to be a state to be a state at all, it is within certain recognized borders. And the West Bank and Gaza are not part of those borders. And so under international law, they can't lay claim to any of that. Like, I mean, what he's saying here, the reason he's getting tied up in knots is because he's trying to deal with the fact that he's actually kind of okay with the occupation of part of Ukraine?
But I point this out because it's clear we do formally have a republic, a constitution, a so-called democracy. Formally speaking, the sovereign authority that holds title in this country, the Constitution, that's still there formally and on paper. It wouldn't be an occupation if the forces which are ruling us openly came out and said, yes, this is a dictatorship.
Yes, it would be an occupation. In fact, that's literally how fucking occupations work. Ask a Palestinian, they'll tell you. Israel is not exactly coy about the fact that they're ruling over the West Bank and Gaza. They're actually kind of very open about it. Like, what
Yes,
the
the
fuck is he
Constitution-
talking about?
Means nothing. Yes, you don't have any rights. At that point, things would be much more clear.
I mean, no. See, he started out with some fairly bog standard international law principles, and he has immediately, as expected, just fucking turned them into weird fucking moon pretzels.
You know, in contrast to what's going on in Gaza, we don't have that clarity. It's clear that in Palestine who the occupier is. It's clear.
Yeah, but they're annexing it, so according to you, that makes it not an occupation. Did he just remember that he has to actually make his definition of occupation work in a way that it includes Palestine? Did he not realize that?
Clear that there's a fake entity exerting brutally its will and its domination.
I mean, it's a real entity. I mean, I've never understood why people think that that's actually, that line makes sense when they'll say it's like a fake entity. It's no more it's as fake as any state. They're all social constructs. But the thing is, yeah, I mean, it's all bullshit. The point is, it exists. It is capable of exercising power. If you cross it, you will actually face some shit from that. So, I mean, in all normal senses of the word, it is actually a real entity. That doesn't make it legitimate. That just means it exists. And it does. It shouldn't.
Over the people already living there. But in the United States, we don't have clarity. We don't necessarily...
Well, yes, we have clarity. We have clarity, but, I mean, you're just wrong, is what you're saying.
always sense that we're being occupied.
We do? We always sense that we're being occupied?
It takes us to see footage of college students on campuses across the country having their heads cracked by police batons.
So we're occupied by the cops?
To somehow startle
I mean, there's definitely an argument for that, but the cops are part of the U.S. regime.
Of doubt in us is, how could this be that this is happening to the sons and daughters of American citizens?
And, motherfucker, were you born yesterday? Do you not remember 2020? You look old enough to remember 2020. I mean, the cops get up to some fairly nasty shit a lot. In fact, it's been getting worse year on year. You're just noticing this? I guess the idea is you have to pretend
here
that
at home
this
in this country,
a novel epiphany for you in order to make it about, the U.S. being occupied by somebody other than the U.S. regime. Wow, this is just wild. I wish I'm glad that I noticed this one, because I think this is going to reward a long watch. Because Jesus Christ. He clearly didn't. I mean, he's prepared these fucking slides and things. But the reason he's tying himself in knots here is that clearly he, for however much thought he's put into this, he still has not managed to find a way to make his definition of occupation do all the things he needs it to do.
So, it's not necessary
So
that a foreign military seizes control of a territory for it to be occupied.
Well, again, he started out by saying this is about international law, and in international law, that is literally the one thing that absolutely does have to happen.
In my view, when interests both foreign and alien to a people seize control of all of the institutions of the state authority, and
what does that mean, foreign and alien, though? You saying that the U.S. regime doesn't have an interest in controlling the Middle East?
civil society, such as the mass media, far beyond any powers enumerated upon them by the Constitution, the country in question is definitionally under an occupation.
Yeah, but I mean, your problem there is, first of all, that isn't definitionally. That's a new, okay, then you're coming up with a new fucking definition of occupation. That is not, because what he's just, this thing he started out with was the definition of occupation, and it literally isn't this. So there's that. But then there's also this foreign and alien interests. Like, does he not think that the U.S. has a reason to want to control the Middle East? I mean...
Are the powers that rule America acting in a way that is hostile to the interests of the American people?
You mean, are you suggesting that maybe the bourgeoisie have diametrically opposed interests to the proletariat? I mean, dude, like, 5 minutes ago you were pretending to be a communist, and now you're acting like, wow, that's so weird. The ruling class acts like they have totally different interests than normal people.
I think the facts pointed out by my colleague Jackson speak for themselves.
Oh, he's still dealing with Hinks and Jackal.
The amount of homeless people that are here, the amount of Americans that are struggling and suffering as we siphon hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign military aid to causes that nobody can even seem to explain.
Lots of people explain this one. It's not hard.
Have anything to do with the American people?
Well, like, is he just coming to the realization that we live in capitalism? Is that what's about to happen? Is he gonna go, holy shit, Marx was right about the contrary interests of the two classes. I'm beginning to realize maybe all of history is a history of class struggle. Is that what he's gonna do here? Is this a fucking epiphany moment?
But in order to understand the nature of America,
the beret would cover up the really sad state of his hair.
As an occupied country, it's necessary that we explore an extremely exciting and very fun topic, which is political science, of course. But I don't mean to bore you and get into the details, but I think...
Oh, God, yeah, I mean, don't bore us with details.
Just roughly speaking,
the thing about Has is, unlike Caleb Muppet, I mean, I can see why he broke off from Caleb Muppet, actually. I can see a lot of reasons, but one of them is, like, Caleb Muppet clearly just doesn't know shit. He has a very superficial knowledge of a few things, and he uses that. He knows how to talk in an authoritative sort of way and have an authoritative white dude presentation, and he's used that to create some sort of tiny-ass little pathetic cult. Has, on the other hand, when he talks about some of this stuff, he clearly does actually know more than he's letting on. In fact, I think that the reason that he got tied up in knots there is that he does actually fundamentally understand what bullshit he's saying. I've heard him talk about international law, and he does actually have some understanding of the topic. He has actually, it seems like some education in that area has been wasted on him. But he actually, it's like, Caleb Muppet just knows how to grift to totally uninformed people. Has, I think, is in a certain way a little bit more dangerous, because he actually understands this stuff and then just lies about it. I mean, just completely...
Sovereignty today can be traced to the classical liberal notions of a social contract and popular sovereignty. Now,
like, who cares? Yeah, I mean, the classical liberal notions of a social contract and popular sovereignty, which I seem to remember there was somebody around the mid-19th century, a bunch of somebodies, actually, when you get down to it, who said all this talk of a social contract is a bunch of bullshit, because fundamentally we have a system that is based on diametrically opposed class interests, and the social contract is nothing but just an expression of the state of the struggle between those diametrically opposed interests.
Simplify that.
He's just given up pretending to be a communist, apparently.
To you. Sovereignty doesn't just mean whoever has the most amount of force, the most amount of military force, or the greatest monopoly of violence in a country. Just because...
Yeah, it basically does, though. All sovereignty means is that you have the control of the, effective exercise of violence.
Someone has the biggest club doesn't mean they're a sovereign authority.
That's literally, when you get down to it, that and you add control of the means of survival and production, and you've got the only way anyone's ever become a sovereign authority.
To the classical liberal tradition, at least. Rather, sovereignty is a relationship that involves some kind of form of the consent of the governed.
Okay. This is not... Classical liberals were not saying this is how sovereignty works. Classical liberals, like the people who, wrote the Declaration of Independence and all those motherfuckers, what they were saying was that this is how it should work. This is how it ought to work if it is to be minimally legitimate. They were not saying that the consent of the governed was a requisite for effective sovereignty to be exercised. Motherfucker. This fucking guy.
Whether it's a monarchy, whether it's a dictatorship, no power can rule for long if it's ruling purely on the basis of force. There has to be some kind of...
This isn't the classical liberals now.
Agreement that comes between the people and this power, such as providing them security, such as providing them some kind of welfare, and so on, in order for it actually to be sovereign. And in the modern age...
No, that isn't in order for it to be God. Okay, but then what you're saying is there is no... if that is... First of all, that's just not how that works. Second of all, then is he not just saying there is no sovereign authority? He started out with this idea that occupation, a fairly conventional definition. Hostile army controls a territory without regard to the sovereign authority that exists there. But if he's saying that there has to be some sort of benefit for the population out of the deal in order for it to constitute sovereignty, isn't he saying there just is no sovereignty here? Which again, and then saying that that's the classical liberal view, which is a bit weird. Because they were saying, a consent to the governed should be there to make it legitimate, but they weren't just saying that there was no sovereignty before that there was no such thing as sovereign authority. It was a normative statement.
This sovereignty takes the form of a social contract, which is enshrined in the document, at least here in the United States, a constitution, and other modern countries. Now, the sovereignty of the U.S. has its basis, as I mentioned, in the U.S. Constitution, and the Founding Fathers were directly inspired themselves by these ideas. And the American Revolution, it's important Americans appreciate this fact, was among the first instances in the modern age of a state formally and explicitly deriving its authority from a popular social contract.
Which is nonsense, though. It wasn't a popular social contract. The Constitution was drafted and debated in secret. Not only did most people have absolutely no say in what was going to be in it, they had no right to even know what was going on. And a lot of the Constitution was dedicated to closing loopholes that were related to ongoing popular rebellions. There was all sorts of... One of the big things after the War of Independence was debt relief, because a lot of people had been promised if they fought alongside, the Continental Army, they'd get debt relief, they'd be okay, and then they came home and they got fucking evicted because they hadn't been paying rent while they were off getting their asses kicked for the fucking Continental Army. And so there were rebellions in places like Rhode Island and a number of other places demanding debt relief. And under the Articles of Confederation, it just wasn't strong enough to withstand this. And so part of what the U.S. Constitution has is the contract clause. And the contract clause is basically there, along with the bankruptcy clause, to make ad hoc debt relief of that sort largely impossible. Because the idea is that if people were granted the debt relief they were demanding, then it would be impairing the obligations of contract, is what the U.S. Constitution, the language in the Constitution, and that would be wrong. That would be unconstitutional. So, I mean, you look at it, so much of it is very much dedicated to dealing with current problems that the new regime had, maintaining control over a restive population. And, I mean, the idea that there, like, hardly anyone got any say in what was in it, let alone, getting to choose who would go and actually be a delegate at the convention and shit. I mean, this is just... Has he stopped pretending to be a communist? But it is time to wrap up. Let me just drop that Discord link and also drop another link here. I am currently translating the works of Inessa Armand, a contemporary of Alexander Kollontai, whose works have been sadly utterly neglected, and the only English translations that are currently extant are translations that I have created. I'm trying to raise $8,500 to cover the entire cost of the translation and the edit, and also just keep my head above water in a really rough time. And I have raised about 28% of that so far. All support is very much appreciated. I know everybody's pretty fucked at the moment, so nobody should feel like feel obliged to do anything. If nobody should like feel that they have to that they should give me anything that they are going to need. But if you can part with it and you want to part with it to support the project and my work in general and just me, it's very much appreciated. And let me see, let me just drop that Discord link. Schlaf gut. Have a good evening. I hope you enjoyed the stream. And I look forward to seeing you in the Discord and seeing you next week, Friday at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, when we resume. Have a good night. Good luck.